Hey y'all, welcome back to Penny for Your Thoughts, where we talk real life, real growth, and real healing. And at the end, I'll give my 2 cents. Today we're talking about something that almost everybody has experienced, but not everybody is willing to confront: generational curses. Now, before some of y'all click away because you think this is about demons, witchcraft, or superstition, stay with me. Because whether you believe in generational curses, spirituality, or psychologically, one thing is certain: patterns travel, pain travels, trauma travels, addiction travels, abandonment travels, poverty travels, silence travels. And unless somebody decides to interrupt the cycle, those things keep moving from one generation to the next. The scary part? Most people don't even realize they're carrying something that didn't start with them. Nobody wakes up and says, I hope my children inherit my trauma. Nobody says, I hope my daughter struggles with self-worth like I did. I hope my son learns to suppress his emotions. I hope my kids repeat every mistake I made. It happens every single day. Because children learn more from what we demonstrate than what we say. If a child grows up watching unhealthy relationships become normal, if a child grows up watching chaos becomes familiar, if a child grows up around addiction becomes less shocking, if a child grows up seeing abuse, disrespect, manipulation, neglect, or emotional unavailability, those things can become their blueprint. Not because they want them, because that's what they know. Let's talk about the different types of generational curses. People often think generational curses are only spiritual, but there are many forms. Let's go through them. Financial curses, families trapped in cycles of debt, living paycheck to paycheck, never learning financial literacy, never building wealth, believing money is impossible to keep, believing rich people are evil, believing success belongs to everybody else. Emotional curses, families where nobody talks about feelings. Everybody suffers in silence. Everybody pretends to be okay. Pain gets buried instead of healed. Relationship curses, generations of broken relationships, infidelity, toxic marriages, abandonment, codependency, settling for less than you deserve because nobody showed you what healthy love looks like. Addiction curses, alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex addiction, shopping addiction, escaping reality instead of healing reality, victimhood curses, the belief that life is always happening to us instead of for us, the belief that change is impossible, the belief that growth belongs to other people, the belief that this is just who I am. Spiritual curses, generations disconnected from purpose, disconnected from faith, disconnected from accountability, disconnected from healing. And as you can see, there's many generational curses. Why do they travel down the bloodline? Because unresolved pain doesn't disappear, it transfers. Think about that. Pain that isn't healed becomes pain that's handed down. A mother who never learned emotional regulation teaches emotional instability. A father who never healed from abandonment may unintentionally create more abandonment. A family that never discusses mental health creates another generation that suffers in silence. What isn't transformed gets transferred. That's why healing isn't selfish. Healing is generational work. How people fall into the trap. This is where it gets dangerous. Most people can identify the problem. Very few people change it. Because change requires discomfort. It requires accountability. It requires looking in the mirror. It's easier to say, that's just how we are. Our family has always been like this. The men in this family don't talk. The women in this family are strong. We've always struggled. Everybody in our family has a temper. We're just built different. No. You're not built different. You've been conditioned. There's a difference. And what was learned can be unlearned. The most dangerous family phrase, that's just how we are. I honestly think those 5 words have destroyed more futures than people realize. Because those words remove responsibility. Those words make dysfunction sound normal. Those words turn survival habits into family traditions. Those words convince people that healing is betrayal. But here's the truth. You can love your family and still refuse to repeat their mistakes. You can honor your family and still choose a different path. You can understand why they became who they became without becoming them. The chosen one of the bloodline. Every family eventually produces one person who gets tired. One person who starts asking questions. One person who notices the patterns. One person who refuses to normalize dysfunction. One person who says, no more. That person often gets misunderstood, criticized, laughed at, called difficult, called dramatic, called disrespectful, called sensitive. Because when one person changes, everybody else's comfort gets challenged. The cycle wants to survive. The pattern wants to survive. The dysfunction wants to survive. And the person breaking it becomes a threat. The man or woman who refuses to pass it down. I want to talk directly to the man or woman carrying that weight. The man or woman who looks at her or his children and decides it stops here. The people who refuses to pass down trauma disguised as tradition. The people who chooses therapy. Chooses healing. Chooses growth. Chooses accountability. Chooses self-awareness. The person who apologizes when they're wrong. The person who learns emotional intelligence. The person who refuses to make their children responsible for wounds they've never healed. The person who decides their children will inherit wisdom instead of wounds. That person is doing holy work, even when nobody notices, when nobody applauds, when they feel exhausted, because they are building a future they may never fully see. Here's the price of breaking the curse. Breaking generational curses is not glamorous. Sometimes it means grieving people who are still alive. It means setting boundaries. It means losing relationships. It means standing alone. It means becoming someone your family doesn't recognize. Growth often feels lonely before it feels rewarding, but temporary loneliness is a small price to pay for permanent freedom. Now, here's the flip of the coin. Sometimes we spend so much time blaming previous generations that we forget one uncomfortable truth. They were carrying things too. Your grandparents inherited something, and even their parents inherited something. Most people, they weren't trying to create dysfunction, they were surviving it. Understanding that doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it creates compassion. And compassion allows healing without hatred. Let's wrap this up. Maybe you're the first person in your family to heal. Maybe you are the first person to go to therapy. Maybe you're the first person to build wealth. Maybe you're the first person to choose healthy relationships. Maybe you're the first person to break the addiction. Maybe you're the first person to speak up. Maybe you're the first person to say, "This ends with me." And if that's you, keep going, because every difficult decision you're making today is creating a different reality for generations you'll never meet. Your children and their children after that. One healed person can change an entire bloodline. Remember, what isn't transformed gets transferred, but what gets healed can become a blessing instead of a burden. And that's my 2 cents. Bye.